Welcome back to Media7, where I'm talking to freelance journalist John Stevenson about Afghanistan, the press and politics. John, before the break we were talking to our troops there, reporting on them to some extent. What do you make of the furore about the pictures of Corporal Apiato, who's become, I have to say, a kind of cult figure on the back of them? Should they have been published?
I think it's a very complicated issue. In essence, I was against the publication of the photos, thereby putting myself at odds with some of my colleagues and curiously doing the Defence Force a favour. Not that it's been duly noted, but I think that it added nothing significant of public interest to the discussion.
Ostensibly the reason for not showing the picture of him was that it would put him in danger. You're going there. Are you in danger when you go there? What's the degree of danger you're embracing?
I'm probably in significantly less danger than members of the SAS who wear a uniform and put themselves into very difficult situations, including situations where they're being fired upon. I would never knowingly do that. I think it's very hard to talk about the journalists being in danger. It's a choice we make to go there. No one's forcing me to do it. I can leave any time. My heart goes out to the women, the children, the people, the civilians who don't have a choice. They're the ones who are the real heroes, not prime ministers parading around in flak jackets.
You said no one's forcing you to go. To some extent, no one's paying you to go either. I mean, you've had to borrow money to do these trips, haven't you? I
have, yeah. Once again, you know, it's a choice, and I don't want to get out of violin. I've had fantastic support from colleagues. Monique Farmer, the features editor at the Star Times, Anthony Hubbard, good friend and colleague. They've been wonderful, and you know, it's a collaborative effort. It's not just the person on the ground, obviously. Also the locals, my translator, people that help me out, people that risk their life so I can report. But you know, it's a challenge. It's a challenge, but I think it's, you know, there's something elemental going on. You know, if you sit as I have on the last trip with people who have watched American Special Forces burst into their house and essentially execute 5 members of their family in cold blood, and they sit there and they tell you that story without any trace of embellishment, exaggeration, in a very humble, matter-of-fact tone, without any request for compensation, you know, you feel a duty to report about that because that is something that New Zealand is involved with.
Which brings up the question of whether we're there on the side of the good guys, because that really should be the whole basis of us having a presence, of having 200 troops there, is that we're on the side of good. Are we?
I think one thing you learn very quickly when you cover conflict is there aren't many good guys. There are people there from New Zealand and from other countries who are doing brave work, who mean well, who are trying their best. But as I said before, in terms of the West messing with Afghanistan for many years, and Russia as well, in terms of the evil that men in high places have done over the years, I think we're not on the side of the angels. I think it's very hard to talk about winning and losing in Afghanistan, but if I had to give a sort of a sound bite about it, I think it's finished, it's over, it's done. We should leave.
But we can't.
It's like Robert Fisk said about Iraq, you know, the Americans must leave Iraq, the Americans can't leave Iraq, the Americans will leave Iraq.
How about the locals? You know, is there any danger of New Zealand taxpayers' money going into the pockets of corrupt officials? Because, you know, as we noted in that setup earlier on, that Karzai's been ticked off over corruption.
It's very hard for me to make an educated comment about that. I can only report to you what people have said to me. There were many reports in Bamiyan of corruption in terms of where New Zealand aid money is going. Many reports, including reports from very senior people, and that includes local MPs. I have no way of verifying or falsifying those claims, but it's very clear to me, as it would be to anyone that spends more than 5 minutes in Afghanistan, that the country is absolutely riddled with corruption. What
would it take for you to be able to verify those claims? Would it take more financial backing, help? What would it take?
Probably a much greater facility with mathematics and accounting than I possess, but and a lot of time. And I think, frankly, it would be very difficult to get all the information because officials here would be very reluctant to let you have access to all that information. Certainly officials there would be very reluctant.
As a consequence of the Prime Minister's trip, the New Zealand commitment to Afghanistan, both the PRT and the SAS, as I understand it, has been extended till 2015. What will face New Zealand troops in those 5 years to come?
Well, I'll quote you the words of a former CIA field agent and analyst, a guy who's now an analyst with the RAND Corporation who I interviewed last year, who's an extremely well-read guy and a guy with practical experience on the ground. He said, it's over. the Taliban are going to make us bleed. It's unwinnable in the sense that we've lost the trust of the Afghan people, and it's for the Afghans to decide how their country will evolve. I think it's, you know, it's very tempting to say, look, we've put all this energy in, we've put all this money in, we've put all these lives in, and to keep following that track. But I just get the sense from talking to Afghans that we've lost their trust. Certainly the Americans have lost their trust. I mean, that was overwhelmingly clear. And the government that we've installed, effectively the government of Hamid Karzai, well, in 5 weeks I met 2 people who supported him, one of whom was Karzai's chief of staff.
Just briefly then, that implies that we shouldn't be there, that no one should be there. What would actually happen if all the Western troops pulled out?
I think if the Western troops pulled out immediately, there would be a very ugly fight. There would be a mass exodus of people from some areas. Estimates range from 2 to 3 million. I think there would be incredible suffering from women, from children, from the vulnerable. I think possibly the Taliban would gain the upper hand in what you might refer to as Pashtunistan, the southern eastern belt. But areas like Bamiyan, the north, they would remain much more under the control of the government that they are at the moment. I think there would probably have to be negotiations, which is how most wars end. There would be discussions, and there would be some hybrid system evolve that's loosely based around what there is at the moment with concessions. But the bottom line is we don't know. Well,
thank you, John, and you might want to see what we've got coming next. Before we go, like many other journalists, Bangkok-based German photographer Nick Nostitz was on the streets covering the bloody confrontation between the Thai army and protesters. He found himself in the firing line and later gave a harrowing account in words and pictures on an Australian-based blog. Remarkably, there was also video footage of the same incident, captured and posted to Facebook by a young Thai woman. We've combined the two here.
The shooting never stopped. Another protester who tried to crawl away was hit in the leg and the shoulder. One guy managed to run over to us. I began losing any sense of time. Another guy was hit in the arm. After a while, the 2 lightly injured guys ran over to us, one of them falling and crawling into safety. I feared he was hit again. In the back of the gas station was a toilet, a small temporary safe zone. The guy with the shoulder and leg wounds had only grazing wounds. The protester with the injured arm and a few journalists climbed over the wall. I went back to the old spot to see what happened with the protesters still stuck behind the tires. One more protester made it into safety, ran across the gas station. I ran back to the toilets, about 40 meters, realizing that I was shot at while I was running. My legs nearly gave in. Naked, terrible, unbelievable fear. I saw shells flying over the wall. I heard bleeding, shouting, and what sounded like boots hitting flesh. I was more scared than ever in my life before, being stuck behind that wall.
Our thanks to Michael Zahn, an occasional cameraman for this program, for voicing those excerpts. Nick Nostitz has himself told readers of the blog that he is safe but deeply shaken. John, it shows that conflict is a very sexy thing for journalists to cover, but it is dangerous, isn't it?
It's dangerous, and one thing that comes out very clearly out of that coverage, which is compelling and interesting, is that we can't just focus on the bang-bang. We have to have the explanatory journalism, the analysis, so that we get to the stories behind the stories. But of course, it's fantastic journalism.
And a word for Mike McRoberts of TV3, who has not only been covering it for the television, but tweeting through the day. Good work, that man. And that's our show for this week. Thanks to John Stevenson for his time, and thanks to you for watching. We'll be back with Media7 at the same time next week. Until then, goodbye.